The strange movement in the forest. The wind was cold that night. Trees stood tall like quiet soldiers. Somewhere in the middle of the forest, a trap snapped shut. Darren's old alarm beeped, 3 sharp sounds. It meant something had been caught. He grabbed his flashlight and hunting stick, pulling on his coat. Life on Earth was hard now. After the collapse, most cities were gone. Forests grew wild again. Food was rare and hunting was dangerous. But Darren was used to danger. He lived alone, far from others. That's how he survived. He stepped into the dark trees, boots crunching leaves. The air smelled like wet soil and pine. His trap was about half a mile from the cabin. As he got closer, he noticed something strange. His dog, Rook, refused to move forward. The dog sniffed the air and whimpered. "That's new," Darren whispered. Rook never backed away from prey. He reached the trap and froze. Inside the snare, glowing softly under moonlight, was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin shimmered silver, smooth like metal. Her eyes were large and blue with no whites. Thin wires ran from her hair to her arms, glowing faintly. She was shaking, holding her knees to her chest. The snare hadn't hurt her, just held her tight by the ankle. Darren's breath caught in his throat. She looked up at him and screamed, a soft, high-pitched sound. Not loud, but full of fear. He stepped back, raising his hands. Hey, I won't hurt you." Of course, she didn't understand English. The alien girl spoke something, sharp and fast, her language filled with clicks and tones. She pulled at the snare, panic in her eyes. Darren noticed how thin she was. She hadn't eaten in days. "No sudden moves," he said slowly, kneeling. "Let me help." She flinched when he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small cutter. With careful hands, he sliced the snare. It dropped loose. The girl didn't run. She just stared at him, frozen. Then she crawled back until she hit a tree and curled up again, arms around her knees. Darren didn't leave. He took off his coat and gently tossed it toward her. She jumped, then slowly touched the fabric. It was warm. She looked at him, confused. "You're freezing," he said. "Come on. I have food." The alien girl didn't move. So, Darren turned his back to her and started walking home. He didn't force her. "Follow if you want to live," he said softly. Behind him, silence, then a crunch. Another. Soft footsteps. She was following. Back at the cabin, Darren lit the old fire pit. The girl sat far from him, huddled in his coat. Her eyes watched everything, his hands, his tools, the dog. When Rook got close, she hissed softly, and the dog wisely backed off. Darren poured water into a metal pot and added dried meat and beans. A simple stew. The smell filled the room. Her nose twitched. He placed a bowl near her. She didn't move, so he sat and began to eat from his own bowl. She stared. Then slowly she reached out. Her fingers were thin but elegant, with tiny lights under the skin. She tasted the food, just 1 spoon. Then she ate like a storm. Darren smiled. "Yeah, I thought so." That night he gave her the bed. He slept near the door with Rook beside him, but he couldn't sleep well. He kept hearing soft movements. Not dangerous, just restless. Once he opened one eye and saw her standing near the window, staring at the stars. Suddenly she turned and said one word in her own language. Darren didn't understand it, but her voice. It wasn't afraid this time, just tired. Then she curled on the bed and fell asleep. At dawn, Darren sat by the fire, sipping bitter coffee. The girl woke up slowly, looking confused and unsure. She touched her arm, then her leg, then looked at him. Her voice was soft as she said something again. More words. He held up his hand. "I don't understand English." She pointed to herself. "Vel lie," he repeated. She nodded. He pointed to himself. "Darren." She blinked, then repeated. "Da." Rien. And that was how it began. But outside, deep in the forest, a small light blinked from a fallen drone. It had recorded everything. Vel-Lai's people now knew where she was, and they believed the human had taken her. Learning to fear less. Darren didn't sleep well after that night. He kept thinking about the girl, Vel-Lai. She was clearly from another world. Not human, not even close. But when she looked at him, it wasn't hatred or anger anymore. It was confusion, hunger, maybe curiosity. She sat at the edge of his wooden bed, still wearing his coat, her glowing wires dim but alive. Rook the dog watched her with cautious eyes, never barking. Even he knew she was not from Earth. Outside, the forest was silent, but the silence was wrong, too perfect, too quiet. Darren walked to the window and saw smoke rising in the distance, not from his fire. Someone, or something, had landed. By morning, Vel-Lai began to explore the cabin. She touched everything, books, pots, old tech. Her fingers lit up when she brushed over a cracked solar panel. With a single whisper in her language, the lights flickered on. Darren blinked. How did you do that? She looked at him, then slowly pointed at her chest. Kivara. He didn't understand, but it meant something important. While Vel-Lai sat eating dried fruit and rice, Darren stepped out to check the forest perimeter. His traps were untouched, but he saw footprints, big ones, heavy ones, not his. He followed them until he reached a tree, half burned. Carved into the bark was a symbol, 3 rings and a vertical slash. He had seen it once, years ago during the Earth Rebellion. It was a hunt mark. Someone had marked this area as a hunting zone. His zone. Back at the cabin, Vel-Lai was gone. Panic hit him like a hammer. He dropped everything and ran inside, calling out, Vel-Lai, where are you? No answer. He turned and saw something outside the window, a faint blue shimmer. She was standing near his chicken coop, eyes closed, arms spread. The chickens didn't run. They gathered around her, calm. The air around her shimmered like heat waves. When he ran to her, she turned with a strange smile. No fear. What? No. Fear, she repeated, placing a glowing hand over her heart. She had learned the word. That night, Vel-Lai drew in the dirt with a stick. Her hand moved fast, forming symbols and figures. Darren watched as she drew 2 shapes, one tall, one small. The tall one had a spear. The small one was chained. Next, she drew a circle around the tall one and crossed it with a line. Then she looked at him and pointed to herself. You were caught? Darren asked. She nodded, then pointed to the stars. Darren realized something. She was not just a lost alien. She had escaped from someone or something that was coming back. The next day, everything changed. Vel-Lai stood in front of the cabin, arms lifted again. But this time the sky answered. A loud hum echoed from the clouds above. Darren looked up. A black triangle moved across the sky like a shadow. No sound, no engine, just presence. Vel-Lai dropped to her knees, grabbing her head in pain. Her skin glowed brighter, lines of white light pulsing through her body. She screamed a word that shook the air. Kaitha! Suddenly a beam shot from the sky. Darren tackled her and rolled both of them under the cabin's front deck. The beam hit a tree, turning it into ash. They lay there, breathless, heart pounding. Vel-Lai whispered, They found me. Darren clenched his fists. Who are they? She looked at him with deep, terrified eyes. My people. That night Vel-Lai spoke more. Her translator had started adapting. The more she listened, the better she spoke. I was gift, she said, slowly. A gift? Darren asked. To cruel commander. I escape. Darren stared at her. They were going to give you away? She nodded, shivering. Not want. Run. Hunted. He leaned back, staring at the roof. So she was part of some alien politics. A runaway, maybe even royal. And now I've got their attention, he muttered. Just before dawn, Velli woke up in a cold sweat. Her body was glowing again. She ran outside and collapsed on the grass, breathing hard. Darren followed. She pointed at the stars. They send hunters. How many? 3. 1. Kill. 1. Bring. 1. Erase. Darren's blood froze. 1 to kill. 1 to capture. 1 to erase the evidence. That meant him. He went to the old shed and opened a hidden box under the floorboards. Inside was a pulse rifle. Earth-made. From the old wars. Rusted, but still dangerous. Velli saw the weapon and touched it. She didn't. Flinch, she whispered. You warrior. He nodded. Was. Long time ago. She smiled softly. Need you again? That evening, Darren and Velli stood near the trap where he had first caught her. He reinforced it, changed the wiring, buried shock plates beneath the soil. She watched him, then whispered, You trap me. Now trap them. He looked at her. Will it work? Velli held up her hand. A tiny sphere of light floated above her palm. They will come. I will show them. Fear. Her voice, once soft, now sounded stronger. Not prey anymore. Signals in the sky. A storm was coming, but not the kind that brings rain. Dark clouds circled above Darren's cabin, but they weren't made by weather. They were made by engines. Velli stood outside barefoot, feeling the ground with her hands. Her glowing fingertips pressed against the earth as if she could hear its heartbeat. Darren stood nearby, armed with his old pulse rifle, eyes scanning the sky. Then it came. A sharp beep from a small scanner Velli had rebuilt using Darren's broken radio parts. She looked up and whispered, Scout ship, close, looking, smelling. Darren narrowed his eyes. They can track your scent? She nodded slowly. Not just body, fear scent. They moved back into the cabin. Velli went to the table and began drawing again. This time her fingers moved faster. She didn't use a stick. She used light. Glowing blue trails formed alien symbols mid-air, floating for a moment before fading. Darren watched silently. She pointed to the largest symbol. Hunter-class Dralshin, not smart but strong, big metal, hard skin. She then formed another symbol, smaller, thinner. Spy-class Thurin, sees all, hides, listens, sends signals. Darren frowned. And the last one? Her hand trembled before drawing a black circle with a jagged edge. Cleanser. No mercy. No talk. Just fire. The word hung in the air like smoke. That night, Darren placed traps around the cabin. Not hunting traps, war traps. He wired shock, pulses into the ground. He poured oil into ditches and covered them with leaves. He even connected old car batteries to steel wires that ran through the trees. Velli worked beside him, quiet and focused. Every now and then she would pause, look at the stars, and whisper numbers. He realized she was calculating time. They will come in 2 turns of the moon, she said softly. That's 2 nights, Darren muttered. Later, while they sat by the fire, Darren noticed Velli holding something tightly in her hand. It looked like a pendant, but alien. A black metal shard with a blinking light. What's that? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, Memory key. My truth. Inside. She handed it to him. Darren turned it over. The light blinked once, then projected a small image in midair. A scene appeared. Velli in a golden cage, surrounded by alien nobles laughing. One touched her face. She pulled away. The voice of an alien echoed. She does not speak. She does not fight. She is nothing but a pretty object. The crowd laughed. The image faded. Darren sat in silence. Velli looked down. That's what I was. Until you. The next morning, the cabin shook. Not from footsteps, but from a sound like thunder. The scout ship had arrived. Darren looked through his old telescope. It hovered above the tree line, silent, black, and shaped like a claw. A beam scanned the forest below, passing over traps, trees, and wildlife. Then, it paused, over the cabin. Bellai stood frozen, lips tight. They see me. Suddenly, the beam blinked red. She screamed and fell to the floor, shaking. Darren dropped beside her. Bellai, what's happening? They burn code into brain, she gasped. Locator pain. He held her tightly, her body glowing and pulsing like lightning in a storm. Rook barked madly. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Bellai opened her eyes slowly. They tagged me. Now the hunters come. That night they made choices. Bellai wanted to leave. They kill all, even you. But Darren refused. I'm not leaving my land. I'm not leaving you. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. Why? Because you didn't run when you had the chance, he said. You stayed. Now I do too. She didn't speak for a long time. Then softly, I'm not afraid now. Later, she sat alone under the stars. Darren joined her, carrying a blanket. She looked up. Your sky is beautiful. He smiled. Yours isn't. She shook her head. Too much war, too many eyes watching, no place to dream. Darren leaned back. Then stay here. She looked at him. Even after they come? I don't care if the whole galaxy comes, he said. They'll have to get through me. She smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. Suddenly, an alarm, one of the perimeter traps triggered. Then another. Then another. Darren grabbed the rifle and ran to the back window. He saw them. 3 shadows moving fast through the forest. One was big, metal armor glowing red. One was thin, cloaked, almost invisible. And the third floated above the ground, cloaked in black mist. Bellai whispered, They're here. Captured again. The sky was burning, not with fire, but with red blinking warnings from Darren's perimeter traps. The beeping grew louder as each one was triggered, one after the other, faster now. It was like watching dominoes fall, only these dominoes were weapons meant to stop something ancient and angry. Bellai stood behind Darren, her glowing hand resting on his shoulder. They are testing your traps, she whispered, seeing how close they can come without stepping in. Darren peered through the rifle scope. There. In the distance, the first one, the Draal Shin. The hunter was 7 feet tall, armor like cracked stone, with fire-glowing slits across its chest and shoulders. It didn't walk. It charged through the trees, smashing branches and leaving scorched footprints. Darren took a deep breath. Then he squeezed the trigger. The pulse rifle fired, loud and hot. A blue beam shot forward and hit the Draal Shin directly in the chest. The creature stumbled, but didn't fall. It roared, a deep mechanical growl, and began sprinting. Inside, Darren shouted. Bellai grabbed his arm. Not just one. Others, near. He turned and saw the second figure, Thurin, the spy. It moved like a shadow, appearing and disappearing between trees, cloaked in bending light, almost invisible to the eye. Only the shimmer gave it away. And then, the third, the cleanser. It floated above the ground like smoke made solid. No face, just a black veil, no feet, just cold wind swirling beneath it. The trees it passed by turned gray. The leaves crumbled into ash. Bellai's voice cracked. Darren, run, please. But Darren didn't run. He pushed her back into the cabin. Hide under the floorboards, now. Bellai shook her head. No, they want me, and they'll have to kill me first. He slammed the door and placed a metal bar across it. Rook barked wildly, tail down, ears alert. Outside, thunder. But it wasn't thunder. It was footsteps. The Draal Shin smashed into the cabin wall, splintering wood and shaking the roof. Darren fired again, this time aiming for the knees. The creature roared again and stumbled, then silence. Darren peeked through a crack and saw nothing. Where? Suddenly, glass shattered. From the ceiling, the spy dropped in. Theron. Thin, long arms, no eyes. Just sensors. It hissed. Darren swung the rifle like a bat, hitting the creature across the head. Sparks flew. It hissed again, but before it could react, a blue blast hit it from behind. Vel stood there, arm glowing bright. "Don't touch him," she said. The spy twitched and fell unconscious. She had powered up. But it was too late. The front door exploded. The cleanser entered. Everything in the cabin froze. Even Rook ran to the corner, shaking. The air became heavy. Cold, like breathing ice. The cleanser raised a hand, no fingers, just smoke, and pointed at Vel. Her body convulsed, light pulsing out of control. She dropped to her knees, glowing too bright. Darren screamed, running to her, but the cleanser pushed him back with a wave of unseen force. He hit the wall hard. The black mist wrapped around Vel's body like chains. "No!" Darren shouted. She turned her head, tears in her glowing eyes. "Don't follow, please." And with a crack of thunder, she vanished. Hours passed. Darren lay on the floor, bleeding from his head, silent. The cabin was wrecked. One wall destroyed. The spy's body had turned to ash. The hunter was gone, and Vel taken. Rook came beside, him licking his hand. But Darren didn't move, not until he saw the pendant, her memory key. It had rolled under the table. He picked it up and whispered, "I'm coming." The next day, Darren went deep into the shed. He opened a box he hadn't touched in 10 years. Inside was the past, a full suit of old Earth combat armor. Dented, scorched, but alive. He strapped it on slowly, each piece heavier than the last. Vel had risked everything to stay here. Now it was his turn. Using the pendant, he scanned the signal it emitted. It blinked in one direction, northwest. Toward the mountains, toward the landing ship, the alien beacon. Darren packed food, energy cells, his rifle, a short blade, and a heat cloak. He wrapped the pendant around his neck and stepped into the forest. He didn't look back. By nightfall, he reached the edge of the mountain basin. He saw them, a massive alien ship, half buried into the side of the cliff. It looked like a broken claw. The hunter stood guard. The cleanser floated near the entrance, but no sign of Vel. He activated his cloaking field, an old trick from the war. Then he moved. Silently. Quickly. He entered through the lower side of the ship, crawling through broken pipes and glowing vents. The alien structure pulsed with blue veins. He heard a sound. Crying. Darren peeked into a cell. There she was, Vel. On the ground, hands chained, her glow dim. He smashed the panel beside the door. Sparks flew and the cell opened with a hiss. She looked up. "You came?" "I said I would." She smiled faintly. "They will kill you. Not before I kill them first." He grabbed her hand and helped her up. Her glow brightened at his. Touch alarms blared. Too late now. The hunter crashed through the hall, roaring. Darren fired 2 shots, one missed, the other grazed its arm. Vel stood behind him and raised both hands. Her skin turned almost white-blue. She shouted, "Karate!" A wave of energy burst from her chest, slamming the hunter into a wall. Even Darren had to shield his eyes. Vel collapsed again. Her powers were growing but hurting her. Darren picked her up in his arms. "Hold on, I'm getting us out of here." The break-in. Darren ran through the dark corridors of the alien ship, Vel in his arms, her glowing skin fading with every breath. "Stay with me," he whispered. She blinked slowly. Energy, low, must rest. "No time," he muttered. "We need to get out before the cleanser comes." Alarms flashed red on every wall. Strange alien symbols pulsed like blood vessels. Somewhere behind them, The Draal Shin roared. It was alive. And angry. Rook, hidden in Darren's backpack with a motion-suppressing cloak, whined softly. Even the dog knew death was close. Darren reached the engine bay, a massive room with glowing cylinders and humming generators. He scanned quickly, looking for a way out. Then he saw it. An old maintenance tunnel near the lower reactor. It was narrow, low, and probably not guarded. He laid Vel-Lai down and opened the access panel. She touched his hand weakly. Why do this? He looked into her eyes. Because when I was alone, I survived. But with you, I lived. She stared at him, then whispered, You are strange human. He smiled. Takes one to know one. The cleanser arrived at the main cell block 5 minutes later. It floated slowly, mist wrapping around the air. It didn't scream. It didn't roar. It simply erased. It touched a metal wall and melted it with silent cold. One step behind Darren. Inside the tunnel, Darren and Vel-Lai moved. Slowly. Her breathing was shallow now, like fading wind. Darren carried her most of the way. The walls began to vibrate. Something was charging. Can you feel that? He asked. Vel-Lai nodded faintly. Ship, waking up, turning into weapon. He cursed under his breath. They're going to fire on Earth. Suddenly the tunnel split into 2 paths. Darren stopped. I don't know which way leads out. Vel-Lai closed her eyes and reached forward. Her fingers glowed faintly and began to tremble. Then she pointed. Left. He didn't question her. They reached a locked hatch. Darren used his old Earth override card, once a high-level military device. It worked. The hatch opened. Fresh night air hit them like a blessing. The stars above were clear. The forest below, silent. Darren smiled for 1 second. Then he heard a scream behind them. The hunter. It had tracked them. Darren placed Vel-Lai on the grass and turned. He pulled a charge grenade from his belt. Let's play, ugly. The Draal Shin burst through the hatch, snarling. Darren threw the grenade right into its chest. It stuck. Boom, fire, metal, smoke, but not dead. The hunter stumbled and kept coming. Darren raised his rifle, but it was empty. He dropped it and pulled his knife. Just then, Vel-Lai stood up, her body fully glowing now, bright as a second moon. She raised her arms, tears in her eyes. Stop, she whispered. The Draal Shin paused, then took one more step. She screamed, a sound that cracked the air. Lightning burst from her skin. The hunter was thrown back 20 feet and didn't rise again. She fell to her knees. Darren rushed to her. Vel-Lai, I protect you, she whispered. And I protect you. He lifted her once more and ran through the trees. They made it to the base of the mountain. An old Earth outpost lay nearby, abandoned but still standing. Darren kicked the door in and placed Vel-Lai on an old cot. He searched for supplies, anything to help. He found an energy pack. It wasn't much, but it could recharge her core. He placed it on her chest. It clicked. The lights blinked blue. She gasped and slowly relaxed. While she rested, Darren walked outside and looked up. The alien ship was moving now, floating above the mountains. Its weapons were aiming at Earth. He had maybe 1 hour before the cleanser gave the final command. Vel-Lai woke slowly. Darren sat beside her. They're going to fire, he said. We need to stop them, she nodded weakly. Only one way. What? I must return. No. Only I can give shutdown command, she said. I am coded to it. My voice still counts. You'll die. Better one life than many, she whispered. Darren shook his head. No, I have another idea. He pulled out the pendant again, her memory key. You said this holds truth. If we show it to their leaders, maybe they'll stop. She looked at him. The council won't listen. Then we make them. They traveled to the valley where Vel-Lai's emergency beacon first activated. Using the pendant, they hacked into the ship's long-range channel. A glowing screen hovered in the air. The council appeared. Tall, strange, emotionless. Vel-Lai stood beside Darren, bruised but proud. She played the memory, the cage, the laughter, the humiliation. Then she added her final words. I am not property. I am voice. I am light. Silence followed. Then one of the counselors blinked. Reset. Command acknowledged. Weapon deactivated. Above them, the alien ship's glow turned blue. The weapon beams lowered. The ship slowly backed away. The cleanser, sensing defeat, vanished in a cloud of smoke. It would return, but not today. Darren looked at Vel-Lai. You did it. She smiled, softly. No, we did. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. In her culture, that was a kiss. Not just a captive. The sky over Earth was quiet again, but not peaceful. The alien ship had backed away into orbit, no longer aiming its weapons, but still watching. The council had paused their strike, but Darren knew it wasn't over, and Vel-Lai knew it too. She sat on a log outside the abandoned outpost, her hands glowing softly as she traced unknown shapes in the dirt. They weren't symbols, they were names. Names of stars, names of memories, names of the ones who had been taken like her. Darren stood nearby, sharpening his blade, watching her with careful eyes. She hadn't spoken in an hour, not because she was afraid, but because she was changing. Later that night, while Darren made a fire, Vel-Lai stood under the moonlight and lifted both arms. Her veins shimmered like rivers of white fire. Something's happening to me, she said. Darren walked closer. Your glow, it's brighter. Not just light, she whispered, power, locked deep inside. My kind, they seal gifts in us, hidden, only open during death. Or love. Darren blinked. Wait, what? Vel-Lai turned to him. You risked your life. For me, again and again. Now, I feel things I wasn't meant to feel. She looked up. I'm becoming something new. He stepped forward. What do you mean? I am no longer just one of their prizes. I am. Her eyes flickered. A fusion. Suddenly the sky pulsed. A new ship appeared. This one smaller, sleek, silver, fast. It shot down from orbit, like a falling star, and landed just over the hill. Vel-Lai gasped. That's not Council. Darren raised his rifle. Then who is it? She touched the ground. A wave of blue light spread out like a pulse. Then she closed her eyes. They're not here for me, they're here for you. A second later, 3 figures in black armor sprinted into view. Humans, Earth soldiers, old war suits marked with red eagle symbols. The kind Darren hadn't seen in a decade. One of them spoke. Darren Jex, step forward. He narrowed his eyes. I'm not part of your army anymore. You broke Treaty Code 12, the soldier said. You sheltered an alien fugitive. You stole military tech. You engaged enemy combatants without clearance. Darren smiled. And I saved Earth. Doesn't matter. Command wants her. Now. Vel-Lai stepped forward. I'm not going. With them. The soldier raised his weapon. You don't have a choice. But before he could fire, Vel-Lai raised her hand. The earth under his boots shifted. Roots from beneath exploded upward, wrapping around his legs. His gun flew from his hand. She spoke in a voice that echoed from both her chest and the sky. I do not belong to you. The soldiers froze. Darren lowered his rifle. Still want to arrest her? They ran. After they were gone, Vel-Lai collapsed again. Darren caught her before she hit the ground. Easy, he whispered. You're still burning hot. She nodded, weakly. Too much, too fast. He carried her inside and laid her on a bed of leaves. She grabbed his hand. I can feel everything now. Life, death, pain, love, even your heartbeat. He smiled gently. That's probably my fear. No, she said, eyes half closed. It's your care. The next day, a ship hovered above. Not alien, not military. It was sleek, white, with peaceful markings. A medic ship from the Interstellar Aid Council. They had seen her broadcast. A soft voice came through the speakers. Vel-Lai of House Varen, we come in peace. We watched your memory file. We know your truth. Darren looked at her. She whispered, they are helpers, not fighters. The ship opened. A healer stepped out. Green skin, long robes. He bowed. You have caused change, Vel-Lai. The council is dividing. Half now support your freedom. Half still want silence. She stood. Weak, but tall. What happens now? Darren asked. The healer replied, if she stays here, war may come again. But if she returns, she may become a voice that ends the silence. Darren turned to Vel-Lai. You don't have to go. She looked at him for a long time, then said, if I leave now, I will leave behind more than a home. He waited. She stepped closer. But if I stay now, I may let others suffer what I escaped. He lowered his head. So, you're leaving? She touched his chest. No. I'm preparing. That night she sat under the stars beside him. I will go with them, speak. Break the chains from inside. Darren nodded. And if they don't let you? She smiled softly. Then I will remind them what a captive can become. She left. The next morning, the ship rose into the sky, taking her toward stars beyond Earth. Darren watched until she disappeared. He didn't cry, but Rook leaned against his leg. The dog felt the empty space. A week passed. 2 weeks. Then one night, a glowing light appeared over the forest. Not a ship, not a message, but her. She stood at the edge of the trees, dressed in white armor, glowing with power and peace. I returned, she said. Darren blinked. Why? She smiled. They listened. I made them. I opened the sealed halls. I spoke their shame aloud. And now, she stepped forward. They sent me back, not as property, not as exile, but as their first ambassador to Earth. She looked at him. If you will have me. Darren didn't answer. He just walked forward and pulled her into a quiet embrace. No words. Only peace. She chose to stay. Darren didn't ask any questions at first. He didn't need to. Vel-Lai was there, in front of him, glowing softly in her new armor. Her voice calm but full of storms she had survived. She wasn't the scared girl from the trap anymore. She stood straight now, her silver hair flowing like starlight and eyes like twin moons. She had returned, not as a captive, not as a fugitive, not as someone who needed saving. She had returned with a choice. They sat together near the fire that night, just like old times, but now the air felt different. He noticed how the trees around them bent slightly toward her, as if the forest itself knew she belonged here now. She wore her diplomatic crest, a glowing crystal embedded in her wrist. It marked her as First Voice, a rare title given only to those who challenge the silence of power and live to tell it. You did it, Darren said, finally breaking the silence. Vel-Lai nodded. I spoke before the full Interstellar Council, 7 worlds, 32 voices. Half wanted my memory sealed, half wanted me erased. What changed their minds? I showed them your world, she said. I showed them you. She reached into her travel bag and pulled out a small sphere. With a flick of her fingers it floated and opened mid-air. A hologram played. It was him. Darren. Footage of him helping her eat the first night. Covering her with his coat. Fighting the hunter. Holding her when she was weak. Whispering, I won't let you go. They didn't believe humans had that kind of love. She whispered. Until they saw you. Darren looked down. Guess I'm famous now, she smiled. You are the new question they can't answer. But peace doesn't last forever. The next day, while Vel-Lai explored the forest, she heard a sound she hadn't heard since childhood. A sharp snap click. A tracking device. Buried under moss, forgotten long ago. She leaned down. It still blinked red. Someone else is watching, she whispered. Back at the cabin, Darren studied the tracker she brought in. This isn't alien tech, he muttered. This is ours. Earth-made. Vel-Lai's voice turned cold. Your people planted it? Not my people, someone else, someone who wants war. That night they followed the signal. It led them to a broken satellite dish, and beyond that a hidden Earth bunker, long abandoned but now active again. Inside they found logs, and one chilling file. Operation Reset, capture Vel-Lai, recover alien data, discredit human captive connection, erase Darren Jex. Darren. Closed the file slowly. They never stopped watching us. Suddenly a voice echoed from a hidden speaker. Walk away, Jex. She's not worth Earth's risk. Vel-Lai stepped forward, eyes blazing. You think I'm a risk? You're a symbol, the voice replied. And symbols become threats. Darren grabbed Vel-Lai's hand. Then let them be afraid. He pulled a grenade from his belt, the last one. Vel-Lai raised her glowing hand beside his. Together they blew the bunker sky high. The next morning, a new broadcast spread across Earth's satellites. It wasn't war. It wasn't fear. It was a declaration. Vel-Lai's voice. I came to your world afraid. I thought I was meat, a joke, a prisoner. But I found kindness. I found a man who offered me food, safety, and silence when I needed it most. He never touched me with harm, only with care. That man taught me what peace feels like. I am not your enemy, but I will fight beside the one who chose me when I was nothing. The world watched. Millions did, and slowly, Earth changed. Weeks passed. Vel-Lai was invited to global meetings. She became a speaker, not just for her own kind, but for all peaceful alien refugees. Treaties were updated, borders redefined, new star bridges opened between worlds that once only exchanged bullets. But she never forgot the cabin. She returned every week, sometimes in robes, sometimes in armor, sometimes just in her bare feet. She planted strange seeds near the fire pit. They glowed at night, flowers from her world that only opened in silence. One night, as the two sat watching the moon, Vel-Lai asked, Why did you take me in, really? Darren stared at the sky. Because you looked like someone who'd never been given a choice before. She leaned into him. Now I make one. The next morning, Vel-Lai stood at the edge of a landing pad. A ship waited behind her. The council had offered her a new position, high speaker across systems, more power, a seat at the galactic table. She looked at Darren. He stayed silent. Then she walked forward and turned around. No, she said. The pilot blinked. Ma'am? She walked back to Darren. I am not leaving. I've spoken enough, fought enough. She looked at the man who had changed her fate. Now I choose something else. I choose to stay. She stayed. Not as an ambassador, not as a symbol, but as herself. She rebuilt the cabin with him. She taught him her language, and he taught her to fish. Rook followed her everywhere, tail wagging like a fool. They danced under the rain once. Awkward, silly, free. No cameras, no politics, just laughter. And years later, on a quiet day, she planted a tree beside the cabin. It glowed faint blue. She whispered, For the day I was caught and found. She turned to Darren. I feared you would eat me, she said, laughing now. He smirked. You looked delicious. She leaned in, placing a kiss on his forehead. You gave me life instead. And the galaxy watched from far away, and they never saw her as a captive again. They saw her as the woman who chose to stay.